It was a hot afternoon at a busy Marine training base. The sun was bright, the air was dry, and the smell of dust and sweat filled the air. Inside a large GP tent, several young Marines sat on their cots, laughing and talking loudly. It was their break time after a long morning of tough training. Boots were off, helmets were on the floor, and jokes were flying across the room. They were young, full of energy, and ready for anything the world threw at them. Some were joking about drills, others complained about the heat, and a few just relaxed and tried to catch their breath. It was a normal day, a normal moment, nothing special. But then, something changed. The tent flap suddenly moved. Someone was outside. The Marines stopped laughing slowly, turning their heads toward the entrance. They expected an officer, or maybe another Marine. But what they saw made them confused. An old man walked into the tent. He looked like he was in his late 70s, maybe older. His hair was completely white, combed neatly back. He wore a simple blue polo shirt, khaki pants, and polished old-style shoes. He didn't carry a cane. He didn't look weak. He walked straight, shoulders back, like a man who had lived a life full of discipline. His face was calm, but his eyes looked sharp, strong, and full of stories. He stood just inside the door, scanning the room with a slow look. He didn't look scared. He didn't look lost. He just looked like he belonged there, even though no one knew who he was. The Marines stared at him in total silence. "Who is that?" one Marine whispered. "Is he someone's grandpa?" Another joked quietly. The old man didn't smile. He didn't explain himself. He simply crossed his arms over his chest and stood with confidence. It was like he was inspecting the Marines. His presence felt powerful, even though he said nothing. The tent grew awkwardly quiet. One Marine, a tall guy with a loud voice and a big grin, leaned forward with a smirk. He shouted jokingly, "Hey! Did you get lost going home, Grandpa?" The others laughed. The old man didn't. He slowly turned his head and looked directly at the Marine who spoke. His eyes locked onto him, cold, steady, and firm. The laughing stopped again. The Marine cleared his throat, trying to act tough, but inside, he felt something strange. Something like respect or maybe fear. Another Marine whispered, "He doesn't look like a normal old man." The officer in charge was not in the tent at that moment, so the Marines felt free to joke. They thought this man walked in by mistake. Maybe he was a tourist, maybe someone's father from the base, maybe he wandered in the wrong direction. But the truth was far from that. The old man looked around once more, and one Marine noticed something small but important. A tiny metal pin on the old man's shirt. It wasn't shiny or new. It looked very old and very meaningful. "Hey, what's that?" The Marine pointed. Another Marine squinted. "That looks like a Navy emblem." The boys exchanged looks. Why would an old Navy veteran just walk into a Marine base tent without permission? The bold Marine from before decided to take the joke further. He walked up closer, showing off to his friends. "Okay, Grandpa. Since you're here, tell us something. What's your rank? Were you a cook? A mechanic? Maybe you just cleaned the ships?" He teased. A few Marines chuckled again. But the laughter died fast when the old man finally spoke. His voice was deep, strong, a voice of command. "Rank?" he said slowly. "Son, you don't have enough time to hear all of it." The Marine's smile disappeared. The old man continued, "And you have no idea who you are talking to." Every Marine's eyes widened slightly. Now they knew. This man was not ordinary. The officer in charge finally entered the tent at that moment. He looked around, confused when he saw the old man standing proudly. At first he frowned, like he was ready to question why a civilian was here. But then, he saw the emblem. His face changed instantly. His body stiffened. His eyes widened. All the color drained from his face. He whispered in shock, "No, it can't be." One Marine asked, "Sir, you know him?" The officer didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, straightened his back, fixed his uniform, and then, in a loud, serious voice, one that shook the tent, he shouted, "Attention on deck!" Every Marine shot up to their feet at once, boots on, backs straight, pure instinct. The old man didn't move. He didn't even blink. He simply looked at them quietly. Now the Marines felt something they didn't feel before. Respect. Deep, heavy respect. The officer stood in front of the old man and asked carefully, "Sir, name and service?" The old man took a slow breath. His eyes looked distant, like he was remembering a lifetime of battles, fallen brothers, and missions the world never heard about. His voice came out soft but powerful. "I served this nation long before you children learned to salute." A chill ran through every Marine's body. This man had stories. This man had history. This man had rank. The Marine who joked earlier now felt his heart pounding hard in his chest. Shame burned his face red. He dropped his eyes to the ground. The old man's presence seemed to grow bigger, stronger, filling the entire tent. The silence was heavy. No one dared to breathe too loud. Who was this old warrior? What had he done? Why did his name shock the officer so much? And most important, what rank did he hold? The Marines didn't know yet, but they were about to find out. And when they did, nothing would ever feel like a joke again. The tent was completely silent now. The Marines, who were laughing only moments ago, stood straight like statues. Their eyes were fixed on the old man. Every heartbeat in that tent felt like a loud drum. The officer in charge tried to stay calm, but his voice was shaking a little as he spoke again. "Sir, may I ask, which unit did you serve with?" The old man looked at the officer. For a moment, his eyes softened, like he understood the young officer's nervousness. Then he replied slowly, "I served with men who were ready to die before this nation ever took its first breath of peace." The Marines exchanged confused glances. What did he mean by that? Who speaks like that? Only warriors who have seen the darkest parts of war. The young Marine who cracked the joke earlier stood there, frozen. His pride was crushed inside him. He wanted to disappear. He kept replaying his words in his mind, and every second he regretted them more. One Marine whisper murmured under his breath, "That's not some normal veteran. He talks like a legend." The officer finally found his courage and asked, "Are you from the Navy, sir?" The old man didn't answer directly. Instead, he took a slow step forward. Suddenly, every Marine felt a heavy pressure, like his presence alone carried the weight of thousands of battles. "I did not serve in one place," the old man said. "I served wherever my country needed me. Land, sea, air, silent shadows." A chill rolled down every spine in the room. Another Marine whispered, "Silent shadows. Navy SEALs? Or something above that?" But the officer knew more. His face went pale. He had read stories in the training manual. Secret stories. About men who carried missions the public would never know about. Men who survived wars that the world didn't even hear of. The officer swallowed hard and asked, "Sir, did you ever serve in special operations?" The old man slowly looked him in the eyes. "Special operations?" he repeated. "No, they served under me." Boom. That single line made the air inside the tent feel heavy and thick. The Marines felt like they were standing in front of someone carved into history. The old man then glanced around the tent again. He noticed photos on the wall. Marines graduating training. Marines receiving medals. Marines smiling with their teams. He nodded slightly, as if he was proud but also remembering something deeper. "You boys think war is about medals, about shouting loud and laughing hard," he said in a calm, low tone. "It is not." All attention was locked on him. No one dared to blink. "War is about brothers," he continued, "and remembering the ones who never came home." A few Marines lowered their eyes. Some swallowed hard. The man's words pierced right through their hearts. The officer tried again to speak. "Sir, if you don't mind, may we ask your—" Before he could finish, the old man raised a hand, stopping him. "Rank," the man said quietly. "That is what you want to know." The Marine who joked earlier felt like his knees might collapse. "Yes, sir," the officer replied softly. The old man stared at his emblem like he was staring into the past. Memories flashed behind his eyes. Bullets, smoke, fire, brothers crying out for help, orders given in the darkest nights, missions that could never be spoken of. Then he looked up. "The last time I wore a uniform, it carried 5 stars. Gasps exploded around the tent. 5 stars? That could only mean one thing. A fleet admiral, a rank so high, it almost didn't exist anymore. One of the highest-ranking officers in all of United States history. A man who commanded fleets, forces, and nations. The Marines could not believe it. Right in front of them was a man whose decisions changed wars. A man who led thousands, and they called him Grandpa. The officer's voice cracked as he spoke. "Sir, Fleet Admiral, we are honored, truly honored." But the old man did not smile. His expression stayed serious. "Honor is not in rank," he said. "Honor is in service, in sacrifice." The Marines looked at him with full respect now. Respect they should have shown from the very start. The old admiral turned toward the Marine who joked. The young Marine's heart nearly stopped. He stood stiff, afraid to breathe. The admiral stepped close, very close, until the Marine could see every line etched by years of war on his face. "What's your name, son?" he asked. "Private Lewis, sir," the Marine stuttered. The old admiral studied him, not with anger, but with a stern wisdom. "Lewis," he repeated quietly, "you have spirit. That is good. But spirit without respect will destroy your unit." Lewis nodded quickly, his eyes shiny with embarrassment and guilt. I'm sorry, sir," he whispered. The admiral placed a hand on his shoulder, firm yet gentle. "Do not be sorry to me," he said. "Be better for the man standing next to you." Lewis felt his throat tighten. That one line hit him harder than any punishment. The admiral then stepped back and looked at everyone in the tent. "You are Marines," he said strongly. "You carry the pride of those who came before you, including men older than me." His voice echoed like thunder. "You must respect every soldier, young or old, because every uniform has a history." The Marines all nodded. Some even clenched their fists with renewed pride. This was a lesson they would never forget. The officer then took a brave step forward. "Sir, may we ask why you are here today?" Finally, the admiral gave the first hint of a smile. "I came to give a message," he said. "What message, sir?" the officer asked. The admiral took a deep breath. "A reminder," he answered. "A reminder of who you must become when war arrives at your door." That line sent a shock through every heart. War. A word that felt distant, but now, sudden, real. The Marines looked at each other with serious faces. No more jokes, no more doubt. The admiral had changed everything, and the real reason for his arrival was only beginning to unfold. Because sometimes a legend walks into your life not to be honored, but to prepare you. The tent was still silent, but the mood had completely changed. A few minutes ago, the Marines were laughing and joking like nothing could touch them. Now every one of them stood straight, alert, and humbled. They felt like small waves standing before a giant ocean. Private Lewis, who had mocked the old man earlier, kept his eyes glued to the ground. His heart still raced, but the hand on his shoulder from the admiral felt like a strange kind of strength. A reminder that respect could make him better, not weaker. The officer cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the moment, but even he knew. The control was in the admiral's hands now. "Sir," he asked carefully, "you said you came with a message. Is there something going on that we should know?" The admiral took a slow breath. His eyes drifted toward the ceiling of the tent, as if he was staring through it, into memories only he could see. "I have seen war rise from silence," he began. "I have watched danger grow while others laughed, unaware of the storm coming." His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of history. The Marines listened deeply, hanging on to every word. "There are enemies in this world," the admiral continued. "Enemies who do not care about your age, your strength, or your rank. They wait, they watch, and when you are unprepared, they strike." A young Marine in the back swallowed hard. This was no ordinary speech. This was a warning. The officer stepped forward. "Sir, has something happened?" he asked. The admiral lowered his head and looked straight at him. "There are threats rising again," he said, "and you boys are the future line of defense." The Marines felt a chill. Every one of them suddenly understood why their training was so hard, so painful. The enemy wasn't going to wait for them to be ready. The admiral slowly walked along the row of Marines, studying their faces, their fear, their hope. "You think training is hard?" he said. "War does not care about your comfort." He pointed toward the tent entrance. "If the enemy walked through that door right now, who among you would be ready to protect your brothers?" The Marines stood taller, shoulders firming. They wanted to say, "Me, sir," but their voices were trapped in their throats. The admiral nodded, as if he could see the courage rising inside them. "You have heart," he said, "but heart must be trained. Courage must be earned." He then stopped walking, right in front of Private Lewis. "Son, what did you see when you looked at me?" he asked quietly. Lewis hesitated, then spoke with an honest voice. "I saw an old man, sir." The admiral's eyes softened. "That is what the world will see when you are old too," he said. "But what mattered was hidden here." He tapped his chest. Inside. The entire tent felt that message. A lesson deeper than any lecture. The officer finally gained a bit of confidence. "Sir, if I may ask, what missions did you lead?" The admiral's jaw tightened slightly. His eyes turned darker, remembering operations he would never forget. "Missions in the silence of the ocean," he began. "Missions where we walked unseen in enemy land. Missions where names were erased so the world could sleep." The Marines felt like they were listening to a living legend. His words painted pictures, not of glory, but of sacrifice. "5 wars," he continued. "I fought in 5 wars, and lost more brothers than I can count. That sentence landed like a stone in the room. One Marine blinked away tears he didn't expect. "Why did you stop wearing your uniform, sir?" the officer asked softly. The Admiral looked down. "I promised my wife that after my last mission, I would come home," he said. There was a pause, long enough to feel his pain. "She waited for me," he continued. "Every night, every day, through every war." He looked at the Marines again, his voice full of quiet strength. "And when I finally came home, I knew my battle was over." The Marines respected him even more now. The man didn't leave his uniform. He earned his peace. The tent flap opened slightly as a breeze moved through, but no one turned to look. Their eyes remained fixed on the Admiral. "Sir," Lewis spoke again, carefully. "Why come back now? Why come to a Marine tent?" The Admiral smiled faintly. "To remind you boys that the uniform you wear is not cloth," he said. "It is history. It is honor. And every time you put it on, you must be worthy of it." Those words struck hard. The Marines felt a new fire in their hearts, a promise to be better. The officer nodded deeply. "We will remember that, sir," he said. The Admiral looked around the tent once more, scanning each Marine like he was taking mental notes of their faces. "You will see things one day," he said. "Hard things, scary things, things that will try to break you." His voice dropped to a whisper, filled with emotion. "But you must never let fear win." Private Lewis stepped forward with courage finally in his voice. "Sir," he asked, "were you ever afraid?" The Admiral looked him directly in the eyes. "Every single time," he replied. "But I did my duty anyway." That answer made Lewis raise his head with pride. "Fear does not make you weak," the Admiral continued. "It makes you understand what you must protect." He tapped Lewis lightly on the chest again. "And who you must protect." Lewis nodded firmly now. No nervousness left. The Admiral smiled, a small, rare smile. "You will make a good Marine," he said. "All of you will, if you stay humble and strong." The officer felt something powerful in the air now, like every Marine had just taken a silent oath. "Thank you, sir," the officer said with pride. But the Admiral wasn't done. He moved to the center of the tent, and his expression changed again. Back to serious. Back to the leader who commanded fleets. "Stand ready," he ordered. The Marines instantly snapped into perfect formation. "Because soon," the Admiral said, "your training will no longer be just training." The tent felt colder. Danger felt closer. The Marines did not ask questions, but they would soon discover. The Admiral had not come only to teach them. He came to prepare them for something coming their way. And this was only the beginning. The Marines stood in silent formation, their backs straight, eyes forward. No one spoke. No one moved. The presence of the Admiral made them feel like they were standing before history itself. Just minutes earlier, they were laughing, relaxed, careless, but now they stood as true warriors, because a true warrior stood among them. The officer stepped closer to the Admiral and saluted sharply. "Sir, thank you for guiding us," he said with respect. The Admiral returned a small nod. His face remained calm, but his eyes showed pride. Not for himself, but for them. "You boys remind me of my younger self," he said quietly. "Brave, ready, but still learning the true meaning of brotherhood." His eyes shifted across every Marine, one by one. Each Marine felt personally seen, not as a rookie, but as a soldier with potential. A young Marine in the back gathered courage to speak. "Sir," he asked, "do you think we can become strong like your men, the soldiers you led into war?" The Admiral's jaw tightened slightly. His voice came slow and powerful. "My men were not born strong," he said. "They became strong when they learned to fight not for themselves, but for each other." That lesson struck deep. Every Marine understood instantly. Real strength comes from unity. Private Lewis, still feeling the weight of his earlier mistake, stepped forward. "Sir, will we be ready when the time comes?" His voice was nervous but sincere. The Admiral studied him for a moment. "Readiness is not a day or a rank," he replied. "It is a mindset. And I see that mindset waking inside you now." Lewis breathed easier. That one sentence felt like a medal pinned on his heart. The officer asked again, more confidently this time. "Sir, do you believe we can defend our country, the way your generation did?" The Admiral's expression grew firm. "You must," he said, "because the world does not stay peaceful by luck. It stays peaceful because of men like you, who stand watch." The Marines looked at each other, renewed determination burning inside them. Then, something unexpected happened. The Admiral reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal pin, old, scratched, but shining with meaning. He handed it to the officer. "This belonged to a soldier I led," he said softly. "He was brave, loyal, a true brother. He did not live long enough to grow old like me." A heavy silence fell. The officer held the pin carefully, like it was made of gold. "He would have been proud," the admiral added, "to know young Marines like you carry the spirit forward." A Marine whispered, "We'll honor him, and every fallen hero." The admiral nodded once, a gesture of deep respect. His voice softened again as he spoke. "When you wear your uniform tomorrow," he said, "I want you to remember the men who wore it before you." The Marines all nodded firmly, emotion rising in their chests. The admiral looked around the tent one final time during that moment, as if he was seeing ghosts of the past standing side by side with the living. "You have much to learn," he said, "but you are on the right path." He turned toward the exit, but before leaving he looked over his shoulder. "One day," he told them, "you will be the old soldier walking into a tent, and I pray the next generation shows you the respect you earned." The tent remained silent, but hearts were louder than ever. The Marines stood straighter, stronger, united. They were no longer just trainees. They were defenders of history, and the admiral had awakened something inside them, something that would change everything. The end.